So, my name is Mary Lorson. We're here as part of the Spring Rights Literary Arts Festival, which is operated by our very wonderful community arts partnership. I think I've heard Robin do this. Raise your hand if you've received a grant from the Community Arts Partnership. Yeah. Yeah, okay, those of you who have it, you should apply because they're super generous and super supportive of this creative town we have. There are probably sponsors I'm supposed to thank, but I didn't get that information from Robin. She heard her back. There's COVID in the community, there's back pain, there's all kinds of stuff going on, but we are all here. And that is making me really happy. I'm going to read one little thing. I didn't write this. This is Ralph Waldo Emerson, but I'm going to read it just to set the tone a little bit, and then first I'll explain to you how this works if you haven't been here before. We have 7 musicians, 7 readers, and 7 writers. I got the 7 pages, well not 7 pages, 7 minutes of work from the writers, and I did a spin the bottle in my house to match the readers with the writers about 3 days ago, and then I emailed everyone their pages. So the readers have had a little bit of time to get acquainted with the stuff in case there's pronunciation and things like that, to get used to it. Today, we have 7 musicians set up, and we're gonna create a little space in the middle, spin the bottle and match the musicians with the readers, and then the musicians will step to their stations, the readers will come up here, and they'll experience something that has not been rehearsed. So that's what we like about this. It's we don't really know what's going to happen, but we have enough control over it to know that it's going to be interesting. And we're always glad that I'm always glad when I come to this thing how creative our town is. I feel like it's maybe everybody thinks their town is creative. Is that true? It's like everybody thinks their mom is pretty. I don't know, but like I just feel like our town is exceptionally talented, and that's why we like it. So that's what I got, and if we pass a hat around, any proceeds will go to the Community Arts Partnership. But if there's any other way you can support them, please do because they support us all the time. All right, so now I'm gonna read this thing just because I like it, and then. It's just a paragraph, it's kind of crazy. I've been reading a lot of really old writers lately because the modern stuff is just too upsetting. So this is from Ralph Waldo Emerson. It's just the first paragraph of an essay he has on friendship. We have a great deal more kindness than is ever spoken. Maugre all the selfishness that chills like east winds the world, the whole human family is bathed with an element of love like a fine ether. How many persons we meet in houses, whom we scarcely speak to, whom we yet honor, and who honor us. How many we see in the street or sit with in church, whom though silently we warmly rejoice to be with. Read the language of these wandering eye-beams, the heart knoweth. And it's like that. All right, let's do our first spins. Can I have the musicians and the readers in a circle over here? And actually, I'm going to be a reader tonight, so I need an audience member to volunteer to spin the bottle.
Hello, everyone. Hello. I'm Marietta Synodis. This is Angie Beeler. And let me just close there. Okay. Do I start with something? Sure. Yeah.
Oh, if I just can't.
Eve woke up as usual Friday morning at 5. But what was unusual was the near silence. She always slept with her windows open, although in winter it might just be a crack. She knew for sure that when she went to sleep the night before, there had been an animated cricket jamboree right outside her bedroom window. The grass there, tall, weedy, undisturbed, invited fireflies in July, crickets in August. What happened to all the crickets? No birds or amphibians either. Opening her computer in preparation for work, a message raced across her screen. All Finger Lakes crickets are now property of chirps. Bongoo! Is this a joke? Eve visited the recommended website, a venture capital firm in Silicon Valley that offered a trial subscription, 10 crickets for 2 weeks. Then Eve could rent. It was expensive. But if she bought, there was no guarantee that even one cricket would survive New York State's winter. Red alert! To abide by the 7-minute limit, the next 5 pages have been summarized in 5 sentences. Here goes. The venture capital firm gives Eve options for buying crickets. She declines the offer. She returns to the university's sustainability office after having worked at home for 2 years because of COVID. Now, everything, from turning on the fan at the office to the cafeteria's ketchup squirts, cost money. She leaves the office that day having accomplished nothing and finds a boot on her bicycle. A notice, sealed in plastic, said, "It is illegal to remove this boot by blowtorch or other destructive means. You will face fines, penalties, and possibly long jail times. You will never be able to get a job again, and if you live in Florida, you will never be able to vote again." Another notice said her bike was unsightly, and she should get something more attractive or state approved, or the bike could be hauled off as trash, even if she did pay the parking fee, which was $1 an hour. Eve sat down on the lawn, on the university's lawn, which didn't cost her anything yet, and reviewed her options for getting home. She called the 800 number listed on the citation and spent 15 minutes looping from one menu to another until she was back at the same start menu. She could walk home, but she worried about leaving her bike unattended. Eve was watching all the cars go by when a masked, blue-bandanaed cyclist appeared out of nowhere. The skinny cyclist wore cutoffs and a t-shirt that said, "Question." His dark sunglasses made it impossible to see his eyes. She thought he was going to lock up next to her, but instead he examined the boot, then scanned the surrounding buildings and sky. "You have a wheel boot," he said, like a doctor making a diagnosis. She noted a tattoo of tiny soaring birds on his forearm. "I didn't know I had to pay to park. It's a bike. Who ever heard of paying to park a bike?" The masked cyclist put a battery-operated wheel grinder. The masked cyclist pulled a battery-operated wheel grinder out from his backpack. In minutes, the boot was unbooted. "How much do I owe you?" He gave Eve a leaflet and pedaled off. A few days later, Eve was walking with her neighbor, although the absence of chirping crickets took the walk's pleasure quotient down a few notches. "The police contacted me," Eve said. "What did you do?" "I didn't do anything. They wanted to know who removed the boot from my bike. They were contemplating putting me, an ordinary working person with no criminal record, in jail. A mom with 3 kids. You look at them cross-eyed and they want to incarcerate you." Her neighbor shrugged. "It's a new world. Feel lucky you have a job." That night, Eve started rereading her personal copy of Joseph Heller's Catch-22. The novel's idea being that no matter what you did, you could not win. She had returned all her library books because the public library now charged a lending fee. Not much, but books were no longer free, and that put a kink in her belief of what was right or wrong. Then, The books that were honest about life and intimate or exciting and unusual were being removed from library shelves all over the country, hundreds a day. Soon, not much would be left. That same day, her son, Charlie, who was 12, came home from school crying. The school had confiscated his bike because they claimed it sent a message that the school could no longer abide by. Bongoo! Say it with me. Bongoo! Eve called the principal. She reminded him how bikes benefited the earth by not spewing carbon dioxide into an already too warm atmosphere. And he said, it's not the gas, Eve, it's the whole concept. It's not up to me anymore. And please, watch what you say. And do not post anything, anywhere. This new world wasn't being imposed just on Eve, her co-workers, or neighbors anymore. It trickled down to her son and his generation. People who hadn't had a chance to yet live. It was September. Eve rose as usual. She thought she heard the trill of a cricket. No way. But there it was again. One. She canted her head toward the sound. Then one turned into two. Then three, and so forth. It turned out that no one could control all the crickets in the world. It wasn't possible. For one thing, there wasn't enough cardboard to capture every single cricket with reproductive potential. Second, the crickets learned how to jump, and not just inches, but feet. The next morning, Eve heard them again. A million miniature glass cymbals playing all at once. A sound of 10,000 doors rapidly squeaking open. A few rapped. The tree frogs, hiding in shrubs nearby the water barrels, went queen, queen, queen. Blue jays jeered. Crows cawed. Woodpeckers rat-a-tat-tatted. The return of nature motivated Eve to create more habitat. So rather than mowing her entire lawn, she mowed paths. The neighbors joined in the anti-grassroots movement and started talking more to one another. One neighbor, who was exceptionally timid, helped Eve steal back Charlie's bike from the school. One evening in October, while Eve was sitting on her porch steps, listening to the crickets, she heard a more formal, human-generated music. It sounded like someone down the hill was having a party. The music became louder, and looking over her shoulder, she saw the blue bandana cyclist pedaling past her, a radio attached playing Queen's "We Are the Champions." He wore the same t-shirt that said "Question." On the back, it said "Resist." A dozen cyclists followed him. He nodded to her, and Eve nodded back. Even her neighbors had started a petition for free bike parking everywhere. The students began protesting at schools. Everyone knew there would be more edicts coming down, but the people were starting to understand the grand plan, and they weren't going to take it anymore. Not without a fight. And that was Crickets by Pat Dutt.
Hi, everybody. Hi. Big shout out to Mary for throwing, doing this event. the vast amounts of people who participate in it. There are so many great workshops, readings, and things throughout the community. After this live week, there are also online things. Since Robin's not here, I'm just going to take it. And we love Robin Schwartz. Wish her well, I can read this. The power of 18-point fonts. Wanted to do it without my glasses. Okay. You ready? All right. Because we didn't like John, our manager, and because we suspected that he planned to rob Circuit City on its final day of operations, we decided, John, and I, to rob Circuit City on its final day of operations. John had been tasked with selling off all stock, which meant deep discounts for our customers on computers, television, stereo equipment, video games, DVDs, and home appliances. John elected to close Circuit City for 1 week leading up to his final day of operations, which was Sunday, March 8, 2009, in order to generate excitement and to promote the store clearance as a sales event. The sales event would be cash only, which is an unorthodox procedure at Circuit City, and which tipped John, and myself off to the possibility that John was planning to rob Circuit City. In the movies and on television, which John, and I often were able to watch during our shifts at Circuit City owing to its recent decline in revenue, this is known as a heist. Cash, John observed, smoking during our smoke break out on the loading dock, is harder to account for than other forms of payment. John is going to steal some or all of the cash, John replied, smoking. Smoking, I said, if John intends to steal some or all of the cash, then we should steal some or all of the cash instead. In movies and on television, this is known as a double cross. We were wearing red shirts required of all employees. John wore the required red shirt as well, but upon his required red shirt was embroidered the word manager. And because we didn't like John, we called him Manager. Manager, this customer is looking at the game console. Manager, this customer would like to return these cables. Manager, your required red shirt is looking super fly today. Stop calling me that! Stop calling me that! Stop calling me that! The sales event proved successful. Customers lined up around the building in order to buy computers, televisions, stereo equipment, video games, DVDs, and home appliances, all the way back to the loading dock where no one was smoking due to the sales event. Circuit City made $42,738 in the hours till noon, at which time John reduced the prices by half. There it is. He suddenly went from page 3 to 5.
Maybe that's part of it.
All right. At which time, John reduced the prices by half. Then Circuit City made another $29,722 in the hours until 5 p.m., at which time John reduced the prices to 90% off. Then Circuit City made another $22,835 in the hours until closing, for a grand total of $92,295, which we helped John pack into large canvas sacks. In television and in movies, this is known as loot. John, and I made to leave Circuit City in John's car after farewells and thank yous to John, whom we didn't call manager for the first time ever. John appeared moved, but was eager for us to leave, presumably because John was also eager to transfer the large canvas sacks of dollars into his car. We came back 5 minutes later to find John at the loading bay, loading the large sacks of dollars into his car. Manager, what are you doing? Manager, are those the dollars? Manager, this is an unorthodox procedure. Well, hey now, John said, and then John pulled a pistol from the crack of his ass and shot John in the head. John collapsed to the ground beside his blood-spattered car. His red shirt embroidered the word manager, soaked red with blood, which was ironic. The shooting was an unorthodox procedure. In movies and on television, this is known as a twist. After a moment of reflection, John and I began to transfer the large canvas sacks of dollars from John's car to John's car. John asked John if he intended to help John, and John replied, gesturing towards John's lifeless body, "I just did." Also, he said, smoking, which was an orthodox procedure, especially considering that John, and I were at the loading dock and we're on now what could be termed a permanent smoke break. "It's my car, John," he said, meaning me. "You drive." And he gestured towards the driver's side door. I got into the car, behind the steering wheel. Now, driving John's car was an unorthodox procedure. Outside the car, John shot John in much the same way that he had shot John. Now, I understood that John was bad. In the movies and on television, this is known as an anorgus. Talk about having to look up words and how to pronounce it. An anorgusis. John climbed into the passenger seat and pointed his pistol at me and said, "Drive." I drove. John said left, John said left, John said right, John said keep going, John said shut up, John said keep going, John said exit, John said right, John said, his voice distorted by the rutted dirt road, "Keep going." Now, John's portable telephone rang. In movies and on television, this is known as Deus Ex Machina. John looked down. I reached behind my back and pulled out the pistol I'd hidden in the crack of my ass. And I pointed it at John. In movies and on television, this is known as peripeteia. I told John to drop his pistol, and instead, John pointed his pistol at me. So I shot John. And he shot me. We shot each other. In movies and on television, this is what's known as poetic justice. We died. We kept driving. This was an unorthodox procedure. Our red shirts were red. The dirt road smoothed out and began to glow. Angels appeared on either side of the car to escort us into heaven. In movies and on television, I am known as an unreliable narrator. Circuit City was later purchased by Systemax and consolidated along with CompUSA into the Tiger Direct online brand. This is an orthodox procedure. John and I are still driving. The angels wear red. And John and I are beginning to think that they are not angels. And this is not heaven. by J. Robert Lennon.
It is often said that time is our most valuable commodity. It keeps on ticking away, as the band Pink Floyd once noted. We say things like, time is money, time waits for no one, lost time is never found again, time heals all wounds, there's no time like the present, time is of the essence, or time flies when you're having fun. Our sense of time is sometimes described in minutes. Don Henley saying that everything can change in a New York minute, and my PhD advisor used to say, if it wasn't for the last minute, nothing would ever get done. We kill time, waste time, take time, invest time, mark time, never have enough time, and we worry that time will pass us by. As the old Christian hymn puts it, time, like an ever-rolling stream, bears all its sons away. My dad is fond of saying, as you age, the days are long, the decades are short. Writer J.R.R. Tolkien once spoke of time in terms of a riddle. This thing all things devours, birds, beasts, trees, flowers, gnaws iron, bites steel, grinds hard stones to meal, slays king, ruins town, and beats high mountains down. 1600 years ago, the Christian theologian from North Africa, Augustine of Hippo, asked a simple question that still haunts theologians today. What is time? It was already an age-old question by Augustine's day. Greek philosophers had wrestled with it centuries earlier. When Augustine asked, what is time, he concluded, like Einstein did centuries later, though for different reasons, that time is relative. In his book, Confessions, Augustine said, we break time down into past, present, and future. But, he said, the past and future don't exist. The past has faded, and the future is not yet, so all that's left is the present. But then he wondered, what is the present? Does it have any space at all, since as soon as we are aware of the present, hasn't it already become the past? So he asked, if the future doesn't yet exist, and if the past has faded into non-existence, and if the present doesn't have a space of its own, then what is time? Augustine argued that time exists in an individual's consciousness. The past exists in our memories. The future exists in our anticipation of it. And the present exists in our intuition, our own instinctive feeling of living in the moment. Someone else's past will be different from ours because they have different memories, just as their future will be different because they have different expectations, and their present is different because they have different experiences. The implication of Augustine's reasoning is that our sense of time is relative to the individual person, and that all we can do as individuals is use our time wisely and make most of the time we have. Making the most of the time we have is how the biblical philosopher who wrote the book of Ecclesiastes views time. The writer spoke of time as a series of moments. There is a time for everything, said the writer, a time to be born and to die, to pluck, destroy and heal, break down and build up, weep and laugh, mourn and dance, cast away and gather, hug and pull back, seek and lose, tear and sow, make war and make peace. All of those words are organized by the writer into symmetrical pairs of 7 lines in Hebrew. It is beautiful poetry meant to convey a sense of completeness, the entire human experience broken down into pairs of individual moments in time. The point is that everything happens in its own time at some time in our lives, from being born to laughing, to weeping, to breaking, to building, to dancing, to eventually dying. We are going to experience these moments at some point in time, said the writer, and eventually time is going to catch up with all of us when it is our time to depart this world. The writer's advice is to make the most of the time we have. Live a good life while there is still time, and the writer defines this kind of life in the book, saying, go, eat your bread with enjoyment, and drink your wine with a merry heart, for God has long ago approved what you do. Whatever your hands finds to do, do with your might, for there is no work or thought or knowledge or wisdom in Sheol, the grave, to which you are going. Ecclesiastes chapter 9, verse 7 and 10. Philosopher William Irvine has said, "We need to keep firmly in mind that everything we value and the people we love will someday be lost to us. If nothing else, our own death will deprive us of them." He illustrated with a litany of final experiences. There will be a last time, he said, that you brush your teeth, cut your hair, drive a car, mow the lawn, or play hopscotch. There will be a last time you hear the sound of snow falling, watch the moon rise, smell popcorn, feel the warmth of a child falling asleep in your arms, or make love. You will someday eat your last meal, and soon thereafter you will take your last breath. Irvine continued, "Sometimes the world gives us advance notice that we are about to do something for the last time. We might eat at a favorite restaurant the night before it's scheduled to close, or we might kiss a lover who is forced by circumstances to move to a distant part of the globe, presumably forever. Previously, when we thought we could repeat them at will, a meal at this restaurant or a kiss shared with our lover might have been unremarkable, but now that we know they cannot be repeated, they will likely become extraordinary events. The meal will be the best we ever had at the restaurant, and the party kiss will be one of the most intensely bittersweet experiences life has to offer." Irvine's advice, grounded in Stoic philosophy and mirroring Buddhist thought, is that we should always be contemplating the impermanence of everything in the world, so that we no longer sleepwalk through our life. Rather, we should live intentionally and be grateful for each moment, each breath. From Pink Floyd to Tolkien to Augustine to Ecclesiastes to William Irvine, the lesson in all of this, I think, is to find purposeful enjoyment in life. Not hedonism, but gratitude and intentionality. Pour yourself into something worthwhile that fills you with joy and energy. Make it meaningful too, so that you leave a mark. Don't be a person who merely passes through, thoughtlessly floating. Be morally grounded. Then act. Make a difference. Leave a legacy. Love someone. Love everyone. That piece was by David Kaden.
The Winter Palace Library was overseen by a surly, overeducated ruler named Babylon Sikar. Baby Sip, as he was called by the staff, who cleaned around the uncongenial figure twice a week, was a known libertine, an opium addict and heterosexual who made no effort to hide either. With remuneration sufficient to maintain a modest dissipation, he had varnished the walls with compulsive smoking. In the morning, he chain-smoked Gallitos, I don't know if I'm saying that right, straights, and downed espresso, clouding the sun that flooded the atrium. In the afternoon, he puffed at a hookah, and the sweet smell of opium, hashish, and tobacco drifted upward, layering with the dust until dinner, which he took in his quarters with a cigar and more opium, hashish, and sometimes a glass pipe of heroin. Throughout the day, he drank brandy from a snifter, switching to port before dinner. Then wine followed by more brandy, and read promiscuously, devoting his life to a thorough adumbration, explication, and elaboration of Finnegan's Wake. For years, his studies proceeded uninterrupted because no one ever used the library. And then the children came. The library was housed in the south tower on 10 ascending tiers connected by 2 spiral stairs with iron rails that wound about the atrium in a double helix. Above that soared the steeple. Young Saragon, 10, and Phaedra, 11, stood before Babylon Sipar's modest desk, occupied by a first folio of Audubon's Viviparous Quadrupeds of North America and a jagged stack of worn entomology books. Sire, we are here to examine some books, stated young Saragon. Startling baby Sip out of a reverie. He had been sipping a mildly hallucinogenic tea and was imagining that he was deep inside the earth. As deep as the tower above him was tall. He had no idea what was in and what was out. But he knew, upon full waking, that it was young Saragon who stood before him with his bastard sister, Phaedra. Baby Sip studied the feral girl, about whom he had heard so much. Lowering his eyes, he said, "It is I who should say, Sire. Sire, I am here to serve you. It is my job. And," he looked at Phaedra, "my pleasure." Phaedra's face was blank, and at that moment quite adult, as she was absorbed in surveying the way the tiers rose and stairs spiraled, which gave the illusion of infinite space, infinite books. What sort of books would you like to read? We have tales of Martian travels, the complete unabridged 17-volume version translation of 1001 Nights, fantasy fiction of all sorts, also young readers and graphic novels. Actually, said Phaedra, suddenly quite juvenile, her toes turning in and out. We want history, not books for stupid little children full of fairy tales. We want the real history of Mars and the origins of the rulers. Babylon Sipar was taken aback, still feeling fuzzy at the edges. His mind bled into hallucinogenic fields, taking a long pause before bursting out with, "Boggs, your uncle, you are young yet. Plenty of time to learn. I'm sure if you examine the stacks, you will find what you seek." He searched under the desk and pulled to his lips a long, snaking nose, which he puffed on a few times, smoke rising from his mouth. He stood unsteadily and retrieved from the shelf behind him a leather-bound catalog of Winter Palace Library holdings in subjects H through M, history to mathematics, and handed it to them. The book was compiled by my predecessor. In it, you will find all of the holdings in history, collected by your sire and grandsire, guarded well. The library became their informal college, and Baby Sip their unofficial guide to knowledge. He was happy to ruin their innocence. He gave languid lessons, questions and answer sessions seated on harem cushions on the stacks. An old history book opened before them on a stainless steel floor. They learned how the old world fell and the new one arose. They learned about batons, acid baths, and purges. Young Saragon sometimes went alone to Babylon Sipar, and he was particularly vexed by an embarrassing mystery, usually involving questions about being a clone. But one day, he and Phaedra saw 2 dogs humping, which usually made them laugh, not knowing what it was all about. But this time, Phaedra said, "Those dogs are fucking." Fucking. That was a bad word. You were fucking crazy or fucking stupid? Fucking, he asked. And she squealed. Since she couldn't tell him what fucking was without laughing so hard he couldn't understand her, he finally gave up and asked Babylon Sipar. Baby Sip fetched an unfiltered cigarette from a mahogany humidor and sniffed it. Gerund of the verb to fuck. Origins obscure, an extremely old Anglo-Saxon term for sexual congress, also used as an intensifier unrelated to coitus. Sip raised his eyebrows and put the cigarette back in the humidor. He reached beneath the desk and pulled up the hookah hose and puffed. Damn, he grumbled. Excuse me, it's unlit. He ducked beneath the desk and pushed the on button. There was a gurgling hiss, and soon the honeyed aroma of opium filled the air. He puffed and sighed and sipped his glass of brandy, considering at length his charge as librarian and duty as tutor, as well as considerable ambivalence towards the family that had both maintained him and murdered his kinsman. Yes, but I would prefer not to be the first one who shows you. However, as librarian, I can refer you to the Winter Palace Library Holding Catalog. Volume H through M, it contains citations for encyclopedias of human sexuality, which I believe you will have no trouble locating on your own, as I have not referred you in any way to its contents. I think you will agree. Young Sera made his way to the fourth tier and opened the Encyclopedia of Human Sexuality on the floor. The first page he turned to had a map of the reproductive organs, the vulva looking like the island of Manhattan, and a penis like one of its towers. But the next contained photographs of vaginas and penises, and the word fuck he found, and under the word fuck he found the definition: the act of sexual intercourse, coitus, or penetrative activities of the penis or similar device, including intercurial and anal intercourse and other forms of frottage, digital penetration of the vagina, and oral sex. So it was as his sire and Robin had described it, and now it had a name. He put the book back and decided again it was nothing he would ever do with man, woman, or beast. By John Frankel.
On the way from the barn to the house, Libby didn't realize she was running until she was in the air. That loopy, light-year second when the ground has thrown you away. Then she hit it. The ice crushed her head. Sitting up, she gave a bovine moan. When did she have time to salt the fucking driveway? The sky was still half dark. She got to her feet, pulled her cap on straight. Her legs worked, didn't they? She hobbled to the side of the highway. In the laundry room, she kicked off her boots. There was gravel and snow in her hands. She washed in the kitchen sink and dried them. She had left the TV on. The state health commissioner was talking about pathogen testing. To the TV, she said, "The milk is fine, motherfucker." But even though she didn't usually change clothes between the morning and the evening milkings, she stripped down and threw them in the washing machine and headed upstairs. She was about to step in the shower when the doorbell rang. It was a foreign sound. So rarely did she have visitors. She threw on her robe, limped back downstairs, and opened the front door. The frosty stench of the neighbor's manure blasted her in the face. The sun was barely up, and the man on her porch was wearing a full suit of army green, a hazmat suit, and a belt onesie, gloves, boots, a respirator, and plastic eyewear. Mike Holiday! He didn't extend his hand for a shake. How are we today? She was freezing. Her hip was throbbing, and her cows were acting like animatronics. "We're fine," she said, standing in the door, ajar. I was just checking on all the dairy in the area. I wouldn't even know this place existed if it weren't on the map. Is that grass on the roof? You don't see that. Are those swim goggles? Mike Holiday laughed. We ran out of full-face respirators. I don't even know how to swim. A pickup was parked behind him in the icy driveway. Looking at the tablet in his hand, he said, "You're Libby Flynn? 48 Holsteins? She had to think a moment. That's right. It would be 49 any day. How's your herd holding up, ma'am? Libby was touched by the man's question, annoyed at his interruption, and deeply confused. Who are you, exactly? Ag and Markets? Are you from Ag and Markets? I'm from Arrow, ma'am. She wished she put on slippers. As she tried to warm her bare feet on the mat, a thought occurred to her. Arrow. He handed her a business card. It was spelled A-E-R-O. Arrow Security Solutions. Are you a vet? He gave a little laugh. No, ma'am, I'm in biosecurity. Do you work with vets? Do you know any vets? Inside his mask, Mike Holiday sneezed and said, I wish I could help you. Libby's stomach dropped. Then she understood. You're here to test the milk. Actually, I have some products that I'd like to discuss with you. She slipped the business card into her bathrobe pocket. What products? In the road beyond them, the plow went by, but there wasn't really snow to clear, just ice. It's cold out here. We could move indoors if you prefer. No. She leaned against the door frame. Just make it fast. You might have met the guy who had my district before. Brock, kind of tall fella, looked like Vince Vaughn. Oh, yeah, he tried to sell me one of those digesters. That's right! We're in anaerobic digesters. Top of the line. Best-selling digesters in New York State. That was probably the X-Pro 2 model Brock was offering. Yeah, I told him I don't need one. I do my own manure management. Kind of old school that way. Absolutely unbeatable environmental profile, the X-Pro 2. Wish I could have ordered it. She gripped the knob and took a step back into the house. Oh, yes, well, I'm happy to talk shit with you. He waited for Libby to laugh, and when she didn't, continued. But I'm actually here to tell you about our Necro 3. It's our mobile line. We come to you. Libby wasn't listening very carefully. She found it disconcerting not to be able to look the man in his eye. She asked, why are you wearing that? The goggles? All of it. Are the cows sick? It's just a safety precaution. Well, for you it is. But if you're visiting all these farms, who knows what you're picking up? Were you in the Vanderbilts? She pointed over the fence. Quite an operation, Mike Holiday whistled, which in his mask sounded distant and hollow. They have their own digester, though. They'll probably do their own processing on site, right there with the waste. Actually, a more efficient profile that way. Can you smell it in your mask? The digester? Well, it's not really a smell. Some people say it smells like steamed rice. No, the manure, the lagoon. Libby herself barely recognized it as a smell anymore, as distinct from her own farm, her own nostrils. In the spring, when they spread the sludge over the fields, it was far worse. Yes, ma'am, I sure can, Mike Holiday admitted, but that isn't just manure. That's biosolids they're spreading over there. Libby's brain could not process this. Human sewage, he clarified. Wastewater. My sniffer's been trained. She gave her head a little shake. They can't just go spreading their shit everywhere. Oh, it's not theirs. It's probably been brought in by a state. It's gotta go somewhere, he chuckled grimly. But if I'm being honest, that's the least of their problems. There isn't going to be any more shit to spread liquid or solid from cow, man, woman, or titmouse over there. We're pivoting, man. Libby burrowed her hands into her bathroom pockets. What are you talking about? Well, if the state makes the call they're going to make, they say they're gonna make. What did you hear? I'm sorry, ma'am, but the state counts as cows. By this time next week, you're gonna wish you'd reserved yourself a Necro 3. Liddy didn't want to ask, but she did. The hell is a Necro 3? The Necro 3 is our latest anaerobic digester. He turned the tablet to show her. It did look like a giant rice cooker on wheels. It contains toxic pathogens, safely processes biosolids, and completely eliminates carcasses, all while controlling greenhouse gas emissions. It's the most biosecure method of livestock digestion on the market. Full size. No need to remove limbs. Libby was cold to the core. Are they dying? No, Mike Holliday said. We destroy them first. Or subcontract it out. Unless you want to do it yourself, of course. Libby was shaking her head. She backed into the house. Get out of here! She shooted like a cat. Get the fuck off my porch! Mike Holliday retreated, holding his gloved hand up in defense. It's 8 in the morning! Libby's heart was pounding. What's wrong with you? Awkwardly, he backed down the steps. If you come back, I'll put you and your stupid goggles in a fucking digester. I'll spread you all over this fucking yard. Farm, you titmouse! On his way to the truck, he slipped on the ice, but caught himself. And then he looked back at her and shook his head in exasperation. It was an expression Libby was familiar with. All the men she'd encountered in this business, the farmers at the feed store, sneered at her organic methods, who couldn't tolerate a woman living alone, doing things her own way. They all thought she was a crazy bitch. She was ready for Mike Holliday to call her one. Ma'am? You really ought to salt this driveway. That's by Eleanor Henderson.
I'm a psychiatric nurse at a small community hospital. Some of you have probably been on my floor, or one like it. It's beautiful as far as those places go. Lots of windows and a gorgeous view of lakes and woods. Most of our staff is kind and caring and truly love the work. We try hard to keep the unit free of violence and coercion. We don't use restraints. I like the job because every day is different. The patients are incredibly interesting. My coworkers are funny and smart and tolerate my presence. And because I feel like I'm digging into something essential about being human whenever I'm on the unit. That said, it's hard not to feel ambivalence about what we do. We're separated from the rest of the hospital, from the rest of the world, by 2 sets of locked doors, like an airlock in a submarine. If there were no locked doors, most of our patients would leave. Patients sometimes get upset and scream, "You're keeping me here against my will!" And that, unfortunately, is kind of the point. New York State mental health law is surprisingly draconian. If you show up at an emergency room and a psychiatrist thinks you might be a danger to yourself or others, we can keep you for 14 days. That's considered a 9.39 or emergency involuntary admission. When the 14-day hold expires, 2 doctors can sign a certificate that will keep you in for another 6 weeks. If you're still considered a danger. If you come in voluntarily because you want help, you may find yourself suddenly an involuntary patient because the threat is so severe. Even if your case is less urgent and you come in as a voluntary patient, you can't just walk out when you feel ready. This comes as a shock to a lot of our patients. If you want to leave as a voluntary patient, you have to submit a request to be released. That has to be considered within 72 hours. Even then, a psychiatrist can convert you to involuntary if they think it's warranted. So what I'm saying is, I'm treating a lot of people against their will. I like helping people. I love helping people, but if the person you're helping doesn't want the help, is that help at all? I don't think so. Not always. Sometimes it's violence. To elopement. I've only ever psych tech and I were taking the patients out for what is called a staff pass, a long walk around the furthest edges of the hospital property. It's a pretty campus. We usually take the pedestrian bridge over a miniature gorge that crosses the grounds and past the helicopter pad and walk around the old hospital where they used to have TB patients. It's a gently dilapidated storybook-style building with multi-paned windows and ivy, but now of course it's haunted. 5 patients, 2 staff. We staggered out into the bright afternoon in borrowed coats, laceless shoes, hospital scrubs. I thought I had a pretty good rapport with Soren, so when he took off running, knocking a younger woman aside, flipping me the bird as he went past, I wanted to yell, "But Soren, I thought we were friends!" Instead, I pulled up the walkie-talkie and I told security, "Sorry guys, patient just eloped, headed to the road, I don't know where he's going after that." We don't say escaped, we say eloped. We watched the hospital vans race up toward the highway, then we finished our walk. I was quietly freaking out. The patients were excited and in awe. The tech guy was just smiling to himself the entire way, clearly relieved he wasn't the one in charge. Later, back on the unit, the phone rang. It was Lacey, our ward clerk. She had left work at 3 and was getting a drink at a bar downtown when she heard a scuffle outside. She turned to see a very familiar shape fly by the window, followed by a handful of city cops. Lacey got to the sidewalk just in time to see Soren trip, stagger, go down, and the cops piled on top of him. "I thought I was seeing things," said Lacey. Soren was back in time for dinner. We all pretended nothing had happened. Secretly, we had been rooting for him. 3. Meth is bad. I always wondered if hallucinations have meanings, like dreams. I had a friend who dreamed about tornadoes when she had something stressful coming up. Little tornado for a dentist appointment, and F5 for her PhD oral exam. I constantly dream that I'm trying to open my college mailbox. I can see the mail inside, but I can't remember the combination. Once I asked a patient if he was hallucinating. Sometimes people know they're hallucinating, sometimes they don't. Jesse, a young man with neck tattoos, said yes indeed he was. There's eyeballs up and down my arms. They're like blinking slowly and watching me. Damn, I said, that sounds disturbing. Sorta, said Jesse, but all those ghosts behind you were worse. Jesse was back in the hospital a couple of years later. This time, the main complaint was depression. He looked better this time. Neatly cut hair and a few more very healthy pounds on him. I asked him how his hallucinations were these days. Since I quit meth, no hallucinations at all. Sometimes I guess the meaning of hallucination is, dude, just stay off the meth. 4. Marlena. Several years ago, we had a patient named Marlena. Marlena was crabby and unlikable. She sat in her wheelchair in the middle of the day room for hours at a time, small, loud queen with black braids and a Dallas Cowboys sweatshirt. She came to us from her brother's house, where she had gone to live after she got too sick to be alone. Her kidneys were failing, so she went over to dialysis 3 times a week. But she didn't like depending on her brother and sister-in-law, and moreover, she hated her sister-in-law's cooking. Apparently, the wife was some kind of a tofu and Brussels sprouts eating freak. They fought all the time. Marlena told her brother she was going to kill herself. Her brother thought she was ungrateful. Marlena was unrepentant. I didn't ask for this. I didn't ask for any of this. I have a right to be pissed off. She had decent upper arm strength. She swung at another patient who told her, if God really loved you, he wouldn't have put you in that chair. Later she told me I could have really gotten her if I wanted to, but she's lonely now. Some of the staff thought she was manipulative. She'd bring up suicide when the doctors wouldn't give her the medication she thought she needed or heed her many, many complaints. I'm depressed. No one's taking me seriously. I swear if they don't take me seriously, I'm going to quit dialysis. Because of her disability, she couldn't get to a bridge and take herself out like a college student or find a gun. Quitting dialysis was her only trump card. Marlena was difficult, but she was also desperately lonely. I'd sit with her in the quiet afternoons and listen to her go off. She could be funny, deliciously mean. Housing was still an issue, but she seemed to be getting less depressed, and I hope she'd be discharged soon. I was off for a few days, and when I came back, I heard that Marlena had formally requested to stop dialysis. Her doctors were honoring this request, and she'd be going upstairs for comfort care after her last session in a few days. I was horrified. I mean, I know dialysis feels terrible, and it takes hours, and Marlena didn't feel good for a whole day afterward, but quitting dialysis was literally suicide, and we were letting it happen. I said to a coworker, I thought we were supposed to stop people from committing suicide. I carry scissors on me to cut people down, and how is this different? Patients are allowed to quit their medical interventions. Are you going to sentence her to a life of torture by dialysis? Of course I didn't want that for her, but something seemed not right. I asked my boss if it would be okay to visit Marlena up on the medical floor. They said it would be fine. So I climbed the 2 flights of stairs to the 4th floor and stuck my badge in my pocket. I wanted to visit as a friend, not as a nurse. Which was ethically questionable. We're not supposed to be friends with patients. Having good boundaries is one of the most important qualities of a psych nurse. We generally don't touch patients on our unit, we don't talk about ourselves to patients, and we certainly are not their friends. But the situation with Marlena was just too weird. The whole thing could go out the window as far as I was concerned. She was doing Sudoku when I got there, and she seemed to be in good spirits. I brought her something as a little gift from the unit, but I don't remember now what it was. And I don't remember what we talked about. I do remember asking her if they were giving her the good drugs, and she said, oh yes. She said she wasn't in anything. I was there 20 or 30 minutes when her brother came in to visit. I thought this was a good time to take my leave. And as I headed to the door, Marlena said, can I have a hug? I said, sure. I leaned over the bed to give her a hug. And as we were hugging, Marlena said, I love you. Shocking myself, I said right back, I love you too. And I said I'd visit her tomorrow. And I put my badge back on, and I went back to work. Next day, her doctor was on my unit. He said, oh, by the way, Marlena passed last night. This seemed impossible. She was bright and strong the day before. She'd only been upstairs a couple days. I was speechless. Someone else said, well, she's not suffering anymore. No, she wasn't. She wasn't anything anymore. She had died, and we had not saved her. We had failed to give her any good reason to live. We were, in short, complicit. It was by Rhian and Ellis.
This is called Boys Keep Swinging. Walker Pym, 1987. In the green room of Saturday Night Live, Walker Pym lights her second Parliament off her dying first. There is a couch, but she is wary of all show business couches. Not a prude, but averse to bodily fluids once they have left their proper vessel. When they were kids, her brother A.G. would chase her around the loft apartment with a spit-wet index finger. Sally and Tom, and even occasionally her father laughing at the one aspect of Walker that was squeamish and girly. She hadn't noticed the blood flecking her white t-shirt until she'd been in the elevator and had continued to wear the shirt rather than steal something from wardrobe. She takes a drag and holds the cigarette out in front of her, watching the cherry hitch and jag like the bad EEG reading, signature of a fluttering heart. Henry Chameleon enters without knocking, passes Walker and drops onto the couch. Walker imagines a cloud of biomatter, flakes of dried skin, fecal particulate, and semen rising around him, settling like fallout on his skin-tight, bright green bodysuit. The whole band, her father included, is wearing them for the second number. Somehow it will make their bodies invisible to the camera, so they are only a dozen heads, instruments floating. She doesn't understand the technology or much care.
But she wonders if the dust from the couch will resist invisibility and show up on Henry's body when it's broadcast, like static, noise in the signal, junk data. 4 days rehearsal for one number, says Henry, staring at the ceiling. Your father's a fascist. He points at Walker's cigarette. She bums him one from her pack. Walker only sees Henry maybe 3 times a year in person. She can count on one sighting at the holiday party Sally puts together every year, then 2 annual chance meetings, either connected to something Henry and her father are working on, like this one, or at some show in an abandoned apartment or record store where he stands cool and apart. Angie says Henry's like Uatu the Watcher from Fantastic Four. He observes and never interferes, but his presence means something cosmically significant is about to happen. Sally calls Henry the eternal teenager, but she means it in a good way, she says. Walker never talks to him at shows. In interviews, he drops his accent, sounds neither American nor British, like he's speaking an older form of the language, like the usual signifiers of origin that accrete on a person's speech patterns slide right off this Teflon slip tongue. But among friends, he still sounds like a Newcastle kid who played acoustic guitar in a skiffle band and screamed like mad for the Beatles before Walker was born. Used to come to New York and down a whole album in a week, he says. Walker remembers that week. Henry in the loft, looking like Rasputin, dark beard over hollowed cheeks, insisting Walker and a G call him Uncle Henry. Now your father says we can't do the song without a horn section. What legitimate musician needs a fucking horn section? It's not fucking jazz. He pops the cigarette to the corner of his mouth and adjusts the prodigious bulge in his crotch. According to Sally, Henry's penis is legendary. The groupie girls used to call it the chameleon's lizard, she'd confided to Walker. Sally exists for Walker the way a photon does, fluctuating between states. Mother and friends, guardian and sister. Most everything she knew about sex, Sally told her, although the frank tales of the exploits her father and his friends made Walker squirm a little, as did conversations about Uncle Henry's dick, which, once summoned to mind, cannot be unimagined. She wonders if during the show it will warp the images projected onto it, bending the shape of television reality so millions of home viewers see, liminally or subliminally, the chameleon's lizard. Henry points at her t-shirt. Real blood? She nods. Very authentic, he says. Yours? She shakes her head. Tom's, she says. Henry smiles sadly. And how is our Tom of Martyrs this evening? Dead, says Walker. Henry closes his eyes and bows his head. Just now? Walker nods. She's come directly from St. Vincent's on West 12th, one of the only hospitals in Manhattan with a hospice unit that took AIDS cases. Celebrities, Tom explained as he was being checked in, donate $10,000 to clinics in case they get the bug, and then $1,000 to hospices in case their ex-boyfriends do. His stay had been paid for quietly by Walker's dad, who hadn't been to visit. By the time he'd gone into hospice, Tom DeMilo weighed short of 100 pounds and had a list of diseases and infections that sounded like bands her brother might book a gig with. Kaposi sarcoma, cryptococcus, toxoplasmosis, they didn't matter. They were all manifestations of the bug, side projects of the bug, and it was the bug that killed you. The bug gets the credit, even if some obscure ovine cancer does the work. The snow was melting when Sally and Walker and G took him in, and by the time the trees were budding, he was only lucid half the time. Most visits, Walker sat with him while he slept, read him Rimbaud or Frankel while the bug ate his insides quietly. Today, when she went in, the younger nurses avoided eye contact. The vets acted the same as always. Squeamishness about death was a rookie mistake and a job liability. "Walker, come here and squeeze me till I break," he said when he saw her. There are phrases we reserve for those we love, harmless bits of language we hoard and protect, so that when we say them to someone, they know those words have been held in trust for them. With effort, Tom propped himself up in the bed and Walker hugged him as if he were made of spun sugar. It was too much, and it dislodged something in his lungs, something dark and ominously named. She felt his body hitch, and when she pulled away, a cough racked him. Blood, unhealthy, black, sprayed from the back of his throat across the white of her shirt. She hated herself for pulling away. A reflex, checking her hands and lips for blood, for spit, the voice that screamed, "Fuck!" in her brain. "Oh, fuck, honey," said Tom. He tried to raise a hand to wipe it away, but he couldn't manage. "It's fine, Tom," she said. She looked at the spatter, an expanding cone, a megaphone of infected blood across her chest. "It's cool," she said. "Buy a new shirt." "Rest," she said. She slid his eyelids closed with a limp hand, the way you would for a baby. He flinched, and she reminded herself, his skin is on fire, everything hurts. Squeeze him until he breaks. Henry, who, rumor has it, was out with Janice the night before, had coffee with Jimmy the day of, who contains 100 deaths and a dozen of his own, shakes his head. "Tom was a good one," he says. He brushes invisible particles off the shoulder of his bodysuit. With her pinky finger, Walker picks at one of the larger drops of blood, dime-sided and scabbed into the fabric. In the years she's known Henry, there were times he's been a hugger, incarnations of him that were effusively warm, if strangely analytic about the benefits of intimate physicality. "This confirms," he told Walker once in an embrace, "that both of us are bodies and must support each other as we travel through physical space." This version of Henry, the floating head version, not a hugger. He stubs out his cigarette. "Can I ask you to do something awful?" he says. "Please," says Walker. "Don't tell your father till after the show. We'll be destroyed." "I can't stick around," she says. "I've got a show later." "You want me to tell him?" says Henry. Walker shrugs. Henry nods, and it's decided in tiny gestures. "I read about your band in The Voice," says Henry. "Terse," they said. Walker nods. It was her favorite word in the write-up. It sounded like tense, with a growl inserted. "Where are you playing?" he asks. "Subterranea," says Walker. Henry nods. He's been there. She saw him there a month ago. One of a dozen people watching a Chinese kid play woohoo under the searing basement fluorescence. All of them wrapped, all of them lost. Henry with his wide stance and long coat in the corner. In shadow. "You know what Tom used to say before a show?" says Henry. Walker shakes her head. He'd say, "Let's go out there and kill them all." Walker smiles. She could hear Tom saying this. Not a threat, but a gift. A sweetness bestowed. The intercom buzzes and her father's voice, flecked with static, emerges. "Henry, can we get you out here? I think we got it." Henry hoists himself off the couch, and a scan of his bodysuit reveals to Walker that it is still immaculate, a pure field. Kill him for me, says Henry. By Bob Proehl.
That was our program. Thank you so much for being here, everybody.